Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. This is the one of the highest anticipated panels in the entire event. It is the mobile service panel, welcoming back our three superstars: Ed Roberts, the COO of Bozard Ford Lincoln; Robert Stage of Stage One Mobile; and Mark Mickens, who is the mobile service project manager for ES3. Congratulations, Mark.
Hey,
And
thanks, Ted.
welcome everybody. I figure we get right into it today. And Ed, I'll start with you. One of the things our audience is asking is, how do you think our customers are perceiving mobile service? How is it perceived out in the marketplace? Ed, I'll come to you first with that.
Our customers absolutely love it. So if you're not doing it, you certainly should try it. They'll take pictures of the technicians in their driveway, post them on Facebook, tag your store in it. Our customers embrace it from the time it's offered till the time they can get it the next time.
Wow, love it. Robert, in Ohio, with Stage One Mobile doing all that work at the customer's location, how's it perceived?
A lot of customers really do like it. You can tell that it's new to them in a lot of cases, especially if you're in like a cul-de-sac area or if you're in the suburbs, but they really do take to it. They love the convenience of it. They love the fact that in my case, I'm the only contact part that they have. So they have my text information. They've got my phone information. They can call me if there's an issue after the service. So they really do take to it pretty quickly.
And come back to Ed. Ed, a lot of repeat business on the mobile service side.
Once a customer experiences mobile service, they don't want to come back to the store for service. Their question is, because I don't promote it on my website yet, their question is, can this be done mobile? Each time they call in after that. And so yes, they receive it well, and it's the only thing they want going forward.
Wow. Mark, you've got a unique perspective because you've launched it as a dealer, all right? And I won't ask you how this pencils, Mark. I am gonna ask you though, how customers perceive it, both as the dealer on the dealer side, and now from your new perspective over at ES3.
Well, I mean, I always go back to the first one we ever did when I rolled mine out the first time. I actually went on the call with my technician just to get a feel for what we were developing in the lab really worked out in the street. So I always remember getting to the first customer and half the neighborhood was there taking video of us doing the service. So I think it's perceived really well now. I mean, really since COVID and coming out of the pandemic, I think people have gotten used to having things done at their home or having things done in a very convenient way. And like, I'll echo Ed, I had some customers that just didn't want to go back. It was always, can you send the truck out? Can I do this mobile? And people are starting to lead with that as the solution for getting their car serviced. So I think it's perceived very well, just like anything else you would call to have done at your home.
And Mark, what about on the repeat business side? Once the customers, receive that, do they tend to want that over and over again?
Yeah, 100%. Because like I said, from a convenience standpoint, that's just, muscle memory for a customer that, I want to get my service done. I don't have to leave my home. Listen, let's face it, over the years, we've all been in the business a long time. Who really wants to bring their car to a dealership if they don't have to? I mean, that's just, have a roundtable discussion on that. I mean, it's just, 100% answer would be no, I don't want to do that. So the more this takes on, I just think that it's just going to keep growing. I think it's endless.
And it's replacing the question of, can I get a loaner?
Correct.
Can I get you guys to come out and take care of it here?
Which in my situation was, when I was a dealer was really hard because, of the reduction of the loaner staff because of, not having any inventory. You're trying to sell cars, not loan them. And, we really got into a spot where we had to have replacement alternatives for loaner cars, and in a luxury brand situation, the expectation of a loaner car is high. So if you can't replace that with an equal to or better service, you're going to have some trouble.
Wow. Robert, I'm curious, the perception for what you're doing, you're not the dealer, you're not the OEM, but you're offering this convenience. Any difficulties in getting that started and, overcoming any perceived, thoughts out there in the marketplace?
Not really. The biggest issue that I always run into is I need more of me. So if I had more of me to spread it, a little bit further, I'd be able to do a whole lot more work. It definitely is very popular. Um, Back to the issue of repeat business, I have a ton of repeat business. Most of the time, once I'm out in the field, they start asking me, what else do you do? And I always tell them, I don't really do tires. I don't really do heavy engine work, and I don't do heavy transmission work. Anything over and above that, I usually can take care of right there on the spot. So it's a really good way to help people out and feed your family in the meantime in the way that you're doing it. So it works out really well.
Robert, I know you've worked on the dealer side in your career quite a bit, and I'm going to come to Ed and to Mark with this question. What would you think would be the toughest challenge in getting mobile service up and running that some of the folks watching here today, whether they work at a dealership or whether they're independent, that they may not be expecting, Robert? What would you say?
On the dealer side or on the customer side?
Give us the dealer side first.
Dealer side first would be finding the exact right person to send out into the field. I think that's the first one. Training, of course, would be the second one. It really doesn't change a whole lot considering, where position's at. I always joke that I have the biggest bay in the world because I typically work outdoors somewhere. So, a lot of guys, they want to work in their bay. They want to work with their lift. I don't do that kind of stuff. I have, jacks and I jack stands and I do that kind of stuff, work completely safely all the time. But you don't have to necessarily do that kind of stuff in the dealership because you have more tools and more access to tools. So that would be one of the things that would be really difficult to overcome. You have to have a lot of stuff a lot of times to do the jobs. But if you got good planning, if you watch what you need and and you do your schedule the way you need to, you can pretty much rotate parts and tools out of your vehicle and just basically do it day by day.
And any toughest challenge that the customer may not be expecting?
I would say that when you run into a problem with a vehicle, if you get something taken apart, that can become kind of a can of worms. At a dealership, it's not a huge deal. You can always push it outside or you can always move it. Or if you have the extra bay space, you can leave it indoors. If you have to leave a customer's car taken apart, I don't like that. They don't like that. And, it gives, at the end of the day, if they come out into the garage, if they come out in their driveway and their vehicle's taken apart, it kind of gives them a weird feeling of, seeing that vehicle that way because they don't see those vehicles that way typically.
And biggest challenge for our audience that they may not be expecting in getting involved with mobile?
Well, from the dealer aspect, techs think, well, what can we do in field? Change oil? And reality is just walk through the shop and look at what's being done there today. Don't ask guys what can be done. Look at what's being done. Look in that first bay that you have out there and ask if you need to. Ask the technician, can this be done if you wasn't in this stall? And you'll be amazed at how much you can do without having a lift. And then from being out in the field, the biggest challenge that we ran into is module reprogramming because sometimes the data file is so large, you get drugged down with throttling on the data. So you got to try to ask for permission beforehand when you set the appointment up if you can connect to Wi-Fi, if there's Wi-Fi there available, because then you're not limited on the data, the file size.
Wow, good point. Mark, what do you think?
Same. That's going to continue to grow too. The files, especially when you start getting into EVs, eventually the files aren't getting any smaller. So I think mobile hotspot improvements are going to be big for us once they start making them. Ed's idea of making sure we did that also with the customer, making sure that we could tap into a Wi-Fi situation. Their Wi-Fi. Otherwise, you could lose a day's work by not being able to program what you're supposed to program. But for me in the Northeast, there was a couple. Biggest challenge in the Northeast was logistics. In a 15-mile radius, I can encounter 5 or 6 different scenarios of where to repair the car. And where what space am I working in? It could be an urban setting in a parking garage, or I could be at a mansion in Ridgewood, New Jersey. So there was that was really eye-opening for us, and we added some features like Google Earth before we made the appointment, drilling down on an address to see if it was actually even feasible for us to make the appointment. So I thought that, that was one of the bigger challenges. And I'll go right to what Robert said. I always thought the key, and I still do think that the key is who's going out to do the service. Who's your guy or gal that's representing your company, because, they're out there on an island, and, they're representing your company and representing service. And, I think that's a big, big hire and a big consideration. And I think that's a big challenge. I really do.
And Mark, I've heard Ed say that before. Do you want to elaborate on that, Ed? Who actually would be mobile and go out there?
Well, you have to be selective in who you choose, because they are your service advisor and your technician. So they have to be able to communicate with the customer and communicate confidently, because you could have the best technician go out and he speak with a lack of confidence and nothing takes place, and things go astray. So it's really an opportunity to advance someone that wants to grow from being a technician into a different role, because it gives them the opportunity to start learning how to deal with customers, but they have to be good communicators.
Interesting. You gentlemen mentioned the access to the Wi-Fi because of the file size. Aside from that, what would you say is one technology advancement that would significantly improve mobile service? We got a lot of people watching today, people on the dealer side, people who are vendors, people who are bringing technology to market. Ed, I'll come to you first, and Mark second, and then Robert. Ed, what would you say on the technology side, something that would improve mobile service?
Well, I'll start with saying we are a very friendly recall store. Some dealers like recalls, some dealers do not like recalls. We love them because it reintroduces our customer to our store if they haven't been here. But I think there's an opportunity with some software. Maybe it becomes part of NHTSA, where we need NHTSA to restrict registration if it has an open recall, to where we can identify that with mapping software and be able to add trip value when we go out and take care of customers and know where those vehicles are, and make it an inconvenience, make it a convenience rather than inconvenience to get those things done, so that it's not a hiccup at registration. We got state inspections. If that element was tied to that, to tag registration, then we wouldn't have the recall issues out there, and it gives us an opportunity to build trip value as well.
Very smart. Mark?
Yeah, I'll build on that too with trip value. I agree with that. Better software for us to know where vehicles are that we can service, especially recalls. I think it's going to be the way of the future. But I'll go back to my original point. I just think the more technology and better bandwidth when it comes to mobile hotspots, because the future of mobile, in a lot of ways, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years from now, when you're out there working on an EV, it's going to be critical that you have enough bandwidth in your, to work, to operate your downloads and your whatever your software update system is. It's going to be crucial. Ed's got some places where he goes that you might not have great cell tower coverage. I mean, sometimes and it's a different, one of the challenges that I'm going to be working on in my new role is just that that it's a big country, and not everybody's problems are the same, but mobile hotspot bandwidth to me is going to be really key to the future of what we're doing.
Wow, love it. Robert, what do you think on the technology side?
I think I would echo what Mark was just saying about getting some way to be able to communicate a little bit faster with customers. I typically use text a lot. That technology has been great for dealerships. In the aftermarket, I really just expand on it because I'm completely open, completely transparent with customers. Everyone gets a full estimate before they do anything. They get to approve it, that type of thing. I think the more places that come up with ways to not only just process payment, but to help the customer understand what was being done with their vehicle and that type of thing. Like I use Square, and Square has been really good because it's completely it's customizable, and then it's so easy to put together what is actually done to the vehicle. Part numbers can be put in, labor times are very clear, everything's laid out in a clear and concise format. So I think just the communication side of it, where you can send those files and they can open them up, or the pictures, that type of thing. I think the more we get into the future of that, where they're able to just open a link, they get to see what's wrong with the vehicle. They get to be able to to hit the approve button. They're completely in control of their repair. So I think that really helps out in this industry.
Robert, do you have who is your do you have competition in what you're doing, or the fact that you've become mobile now really sets you apart?
It definitely sets me apart, but there's other guys out there that do this. It's not something it's not as rare as it used to be, and certainly I'm all for the dealerships getting into it, because when I was in dealerships, it was difficult. Like you guys said, the biggest hurdle was just to get somebody to bring their car to you. There was a study years back, I think Consumer Reports did it, and they did a study and just a survey, and they asked, what would you rather do than take your vehicle to the dealership? And they would rather go to the dentist office and have work done on their teeth than to bring the vehicle to the dealership. So, I mean, that folds into my favor, of course, but I don't think that's good for anybody. It doesn't help the consumer. The consumer is king when it comes to, this type of industry, and just about any industry. Dealerships have to be able to have a leg where they can actually service people too. So I'm all for, Ed setting his up, Mark in his new role, setting up dealerships to do mobile service.
Everyone, we're talking to the mobile service panel, three gentlemen who are leaders in mobile service: Ed Roberts, Robert Stage, and Mark Mickens. Ed, you are very notably well known for the two-person crew. That was the first thing I had heard about Ed Roberts. And you've got that in each van to help carry out repairs that would normally be done at the store, and doing them now at the customers' homes. What was the thinking behind that? Share that with us, if you don't mind.
Well, the thinking has kind of shifted over time, but when we started, it was really for safety. It's if I want to do things to a customer's vehicle that I do need to let it leave the ground for, like I have a tire van now, we are putting tires on in field. If that vehicle leaves the ground, if something fails there, somebody can get hurt. And if I only have one person there and nobody's watching them, then I don't really have someone there that can kind of come to the rescue, so to speak. So that's where it started, was from a safety standpoint, having two people there so they can kind of check with each other and check in with each other and keep each other safe and be there for each other to support each other. But what that really evolved into is it's new to customers. As you've heard each of these guys talk about, Robert and Mark both, it's new and they embrace it. They love it. They want to come out and take pictures. They want to talk to you. They want to ask you questions about their vehicle that they never knew about. And if you're just standing there answering those questions, what you need to, because you need to build rapport, you want to re-engage them to the store, because there's a reason why you're there mobile. They couldn't come in, or maybe they don't trust to come in, or maybe they'd rather go to the dentist. You want to be able to build that rapport with them. And you can do that with having two guys there, because one guy can have that conversation while the other guy takes care of the service. And next thing you know, the service is done. They haven't stopped talking, and it just seems like it happened in no time. And then they can move on to the next, rather than I got them scheduled for being there for 45 minutes. They end up talking for 30, and I put the schedule behind. So that's what it's involved into, is a lot more rapport building with the two. But I put it out there mainly for safety.
Wow. Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great idea. I think that's going to be the future, for somebody to handle, the questions, the billing. I also think there's an upsell value in that. That Ed does. I mean, it's kind of hard for somebody to be doing a service, find something on the car, stop, maybe go knock on the door, maybe get somebody to come to the door or not come to the door. So I really think there is a value in a two-person team to engage the customer the minute you get there. And, if I'm doing a large service on a car and I find something that needs to be changed, a belt or maybe a set of brakes, that person could be doing the upsell while I'm actually finishing the service and possibly moving on to the next that I got upsold for me right while I was working. So I think there's a lot of value to that. And I actually think that's the way of the future.
And to add on to that a bit, we do a lot for the fleets as well, and we can have them working on two vehicles. So I'm working on two vehicles with one van.
Right.
So there's tons of opportunity there. You just got to think outside the box, but you don't have to have two people. That's what works for us, and that's what we choose to do. But Robert does a great job out there with Stage One Mobile, and he's a one-man band, and he wish that he could duplicate himself or clone himself a few times. I think he'd have enough business to take care of that, right, Robert?
I certainly would. Yeah, I turned just 2.5 years into it. I ended up having to turn away work sometimes. So yeah, absolutely.
Just to expand, we combine the Express Advisor and into a mobile advisor too. So the Express Advisor at my store did both, right? So that was the communication point for the mobile technicians also. So kind of the same work in that realm, and using a scheduling and communication tool like myKaarma. That's what we used. We used myKaarma. It was very good for us. So it was instant communication back and forth. And, if there needed to be an upsell done, it was a simple text back and forth between, the customer, the advisor, and the technician. So we did work the communication angle out by using software like myKaarma. It worked out really well for us also.
So, Mark, a technology like myKaarma would fit into the mobile scenario for a dealer in many cases.
Well, yeah, I mean, myKaarma in particular for us, like I said, it was a great tool for us because it was a scheduling solution, it was a payment solution. Their mobile service tab had, routing, text message departure when the technician's on his way, when the technician's arrives. So it is a really good solution for mobile service.
So, Robert, they've got all these high-tech solutions, right, at the dealership level. How is your model different in what you do?
I use Square for almost everything. So Square has appointments. I just send text messages or messages through Square now that they've actually expanded that. So I do the same thing. I basically just let people know, usually 30 minutes out, I'm on my way. Here's what my ETA is, that type of thing. Very short, just short messages to let them know that I'm on the way there. But I basically use the same type of technology. I just use different companies.
Okay. Robert, you were a technician at a dealership, and did you go straight to this? How did you make this transition? I know there were a couple things that probably happened in terms of, over the last 2 or 3 years, but that helped make it that decision. But walk us through that if you don't mind.
I'll give you the short version. So I was a technician in the aftermarket for 18 years.
Okay.
The longest position I held was a diagnostic position at a Goodyear store. Okay. So I worked on quite a bit of everything. And I mean, it went from tractors to all the way to, pretty nice vehicles in a very, decently affluent area in Ohio. And after that, I got a job as a service manager at a used car department. So I've dealt with used car departments for about 2.5 years as a service manager in a used car department for a long time. I moved over to a Volkswagen store, and I kind of had this idea in my head. This is my exit strategy. I want to become a service manager. Well, the only way to become a manager in a dealership is you got to start as a service lane advisor, a director, or you have to go straight to service advising. So I went that route through the Volkswagen store and ended up becoming a service advisor. Went from there, became a service advisor for Audi. Worked in the shop for a very large area, very large exotic dealer in Dublin, Ohio. And we did dispatching for 24 people. So it was Volkswagen and Audi. And then I ran their detail department for a little while during, the whole thing. Became a service manager for Volvo. Then I went to a toy barn for a little while and done some exotic vehicles there. And I was service director in that position. Ended up at Germain, which is where you and I met at. And was a service director for Jaguar and Land Rover for a short stint. But when the pandemic hit, I was doing consulting work here in Columbus, setting up service areas and service departments for used car dealers is what I was doing. And then I ended up meeting a guy that was doing mobile oil changes. And he just basically told me, why don't you do this for yourself? I mean, I'd set this place up. They had vendors. They had stock now. They had a lift. He's like, you did this in 30 days. Why don't you do this for yourself? And I said, well, I don't have a client base. He said, I have 400 customers. He'd been doing it for 2 years already. So the rest is history. I said, okay, well, we'll definitely go that route. And he's literally given me probably 200 of my 400 or 500 customers that I have now have come through that route. And that was where my leads came from. So that's the short, but the quick area there, how I got to where I'm at.
And Robert, how long have you been doing it now?
Almost 2.5 years.
Okay.
So just inside the pandemic.
So you said about 500 customers?
Just about 500 right now. Yeah.
Wow. Love it.
Good for you.
Yeah. It's worked out great. I mean, like I said, like you guys were talking about, once they find out it can be done at their home, it takes a lot for them to want to leave their home again. The best waiting area that anybody's ever sat in is in their pajamas in their house on their couch.
That's where they're most comfortable.
Absolutely.
A lot to be said for that business model. Last question for you three gentlemen today, coming to Ed first, and then Mark, and then Robert to bring it home. Ed, you talk about constantly, I hear you say, ways of thinking outside the box. Okay, and I know you're always thinking of ways of thinking outside that box. What are some ways that mobile can help dealerships, people who are watching today at the dealer level, to think outside the box?
Well, forever. And let's look at that from our shopping habits. Our shopping habits has changed over the last 10 years, just about every way we shop, except for maybe the grocery store. And we might have groceries being shipped to us too, so they may have changed. But things in the dealership has not changed over the last decade or 20 years. And we still force a customer to go through something they've never been comfortable with to begin with. And so we've asking them to do business with us on our terms, and it's our opportunity to do business with them on their terms. And it's just little tweaks that gets us there. It's like when the customer calls in and makes an appointment and then they miss that appointment. Well, we know they had a need, but we don't know that their child may have woke up with the sniffles and they couldn't drop them off at daycare and they couldn't come in. We don't know all those elements. And so it's little things that when we call back and try to reschedule that with a mobile, hey, we know, how about if I come to you? Also, what's the best form of communication? Do you mind if I text you? Because the last thing I want to do is go there, knock on their door, ring their doorbell, get sick, and wake them up again. So it's just those little elements.
The missed appointments you mentioned just now, that's genius, okay? Because how hard is it to get those people back into the system? Now you go out to them.
Absolutely. They already told me what they need, so I know whether I can do it with mobile or not. And so it just ties together for us to be able to meet them on their terms rather than us force them to meet us on our terms. And that's thinking outside the box. Forget about how we used to always do it. I've always done it this way, blah, blah. Let's look at it from how would our customers want us to do it? And if we look at it from that angle, we find new ways to do things.
And Ed, do you think it's going to continue to evolve over the next year or two or three?
Well, let's call it a decade from now. A decade from now, it'll be rare that a customer brings their vehicle into the store. And if they do, we're going to get it to bring it in for them, whether it's for the tow truck or pickup delivery or whatever it may be. We will minimize the amount of times that the customer comes to our store 10 years from now.
Wow. Mark, you in agreement on that?
100%. I mean, I especially with the EV revolution that's going to happen probably, within the next 5 to 10 years. If you're an EV customer now, if you're a Tesla owner, you don't go to the dealership to have your car worked on. They come to you. So the more we peel those customers off to go buy a different brand, they're going to expect the same level of service, in my mind. And as far as outside the box goes, I always looked at it from a capacity issue, right? For as long as I was a dealer, my store was as big as my store was. And how could you get more out of the service department? Well, if you got X amount of bays and X amount of guys, it's a calculator. It's a math equation. It's not something that you can overcome by just hoping for it. So, we had a problem, in the last dealership that I was in, the capacity was definitely an issue. And it was actually small repair capacity where with the customer's mind, it was a simple job. How could I not get my car in today for one tire? How could I not get my car in today for a set of wiper blades? So from that standpoint, I think we solved a lot of capacity issues by, hey, listen, yeah, we could add, if you have 4 trucks, and you're doing it in a tight area, that could be 20 appointments in a day that you weren't having before. So I always looked at it from a capacity solving issue and expanding your footprint, expanding what you do every day.
I love it. Real strong. Robert.
I would go back with what Ed was saying, and I would expand on that. There's huge opportunity for dealerships for open recalls, what he talked about earlier. Also, the software updates, because most of the time vehicles come in now, and that's usually what they have open on them is some type of a software or firmware update. Maintenance stuff that can be done, like Ed was saying, outside of the shop. There's all kinds of work that you can use a so-called flat bay on that, most of your inspections can be done other than lifting the vehicle up, crawling under it to see if there's anything broken under it. A test drive can be done from the customer's house with their permission. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't have to go to the dealership. So expanding on those guys is what they were saying. There's a bunch of stuff that the dealer can make money off of. And like Mark said, there's only so many man hours in a day. There's only so much stuff that you can get done and squeezed into one 24-hour period. The only thing I have over and above the dealership is most of my customers know that I will just bend and meld into what they need. So there's sometimes that I won't go to work until 4 o'clock, but I have 3 vehicles that need done, and I'll come home at 11 p.m. That's not right for everybody, and it's not right for every dealership, but it's something that I'm able to do. I can be more flexible in certain cases.
I love it.
It's not going away. It's going to grow.
I think years from now, people are going to look back at this panel and say, you know, these 3 gentlemen, you know, were pioneers in getting it started and prove that it could be done. And I saw in the news, I'll close with this, earlier today, that Tesla is charging a fee for rescheduling for their customers. I saw $100 fee, Mark, that Tesla is charging. So Ed, you know, any comparisons made there between, you know, doing work with the OEM dealership that's got the infrastructure in place, I think that there's a tremendous advantage for the dealers now getting into that side of the business.
Absolutely. That's capacity. There's a void when they miss the appointment for them and they're having to do something with it. But we have to adjust, adapt, and that just gives us a chance to be able to compete against them.
Yep. Love it. Mark, anything in closing?
No, I just the same. I mean, it's so funny you say that about Tesla. I don't think that's a good way to build a business, but that's,
Right.
that's just me, you know. I also think that the hidden gem in all this too, and I saw this starting to show up in surveys, right? So every dealership in America is concerned about, you know, survey quality, right? And every manufacturer has a way of measuring you and tying it to something that matters. And I think it's important that you know, surveys matter, and what's thought about your dealership matters. And I really thought that the hidden value in mobile service for us is that it really started showing up in surveys where we'd run out and, you know, help a customer on a day where they, you know, came out of their house and had a flat tire, and we got there, got it fixed, and they got to work, and really didn't, you know, have the you know, inconvenience of missing a day of work because they had a flat tire on their car. So I think the hidden value is what it does for customer service and what your customers think of you. So I think that's a very important part of it. That goes back to the pencil part. When somebody asks you how it pencils, I think you got to start reading some surveys to see how it pencils.
I think we'll leave it there, Mark. Great way to finish up the panel. I want to thank Ed Roberts. I want to thank Robert Stage and Mark Mickens for being with us here today. You gentlemen are leading the way. So on behalf of the Fixed Ops community, thank you for all that you do. The mobile service panel here with us today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
See you, Ed. See you, Mark.
Take care. Good luck, Robert.
Thank you.